3, 2, 1, go!
At the end of chapter 4, we pull the Omni chip from Harley Sawyer's system. His monitor explodes. His robots shut down. It looks like we killed the doctor. But did we? Throughout chapter 4, we destroy containers holding frozen body parts, lungs, and a brain, likely Sawyer's original organs that were removed when Leith Pierre and Dr. White turned him into Experiment 1354. But one organ is never found: the heart. If those parts were his, then the missing heart raises a question. Was it stored somewhere else as a failsafe? The doctor isn't a physical being. He's a digital consciousness wired into the factory systems. Pierre and White specifically chose to keep him alive because he was too valuable to lose. They wanted his knowledge and his intellect on demand. If they went to such extreme lengths to preserve him, it makes sense they'd have backup protocols in place. And Sawyer literally told us what he was going to do. During his boss fight, he says, "I will bury myself so far that no one will ever find me. Not you, not the prototype, not anyone." He wasn't just threatening us. He was telling us he already created a backup of himself hidden deep in the labs where nobody could reach it. He planned for this. His final words confirm it. "You've saved no one." He knew that destroying his main system didn't matter. He had already buried himself somewhere else. Even the glitching monitors in the hallway leading to his headquarters suggest instability in the network, not a complete shutdown. The factory systems run on power grids and backups. Removing the Omni chip may have severed his direct control, but his consciousness could still exist in fragments across the network. And chapter 5 confirms it. At the very end, we reach the data center and override the systems. That activates the backup. Sawyer comes back online. The man who created the Bigger Bodies Initiative, who was obsessed with the prototype, who we thought we destroyed, had already buried himself so deep in the system that killing his main body meant nothing. We didn't kill the doctor, we just turned him off for a while, and now he is back. Is Elliot Ludwig really a murderer? In chapter 3, a radio recording reveals that the body of a young boy was found on Elliot Ludwig's property. Organs and key bones were missing. This is the same Elliot Ludwig who founded Playtime Co. in 1930, who gave speeches about protecting children and making them smile. So what happened? His neighbors reported him coming home at strange hours of the night and leaving again before sunrise. That's not someone working late. That's someone transporting something he didn't want anyone to see. And we know from his own notes that Ludwig was experimenting with poppy gel on rats, testing its life-altering properties and suggesting that something larger than a rat might yield different results. We now know from chapter 5 what he was actually doing. Ludwig suffered a familial loss in the 1960s and became obsessed with bringing his daughter back. He adopted a boy named Oliver and used him as a test run, Experiment 1006, the prototype. Once he perfected the process, he used it on his daughter, making her Experiment 1007, Poppy. So the missing organs and bones from the child's body line up perfectly with what Ludwig was doing. And here's a theory: what if that body was Oliver's? Ludwig used him as a test run before his daughter. The process would have required extracting organs and bones, and what was left of Oliver's original human body could have ended up at Ludwig's home. He was going back and forth at night for a reason. Of course, it could have also been a failed attempt before Oliver, or planted there to frame him. Playtime Co. denied everything, calling it sabotage and saying Ludwig was not capable of violence. But the company was covering up far worse things. So who planted the body, if it was planted at all? It had to be someone with access to the labs, high clearance, and a reason to hate Ludwig. And Harley Sawyer fits. He was power hungry, openly frustrated with the company's failures, and could have set up Ludwig to take control. But there's another suspect, the prototype himself. If Oliver resented Ludwig for treating him as a test run, taking down his reputation would be a step toward the hour of joy. A company without its founder is already very weak. The video's original theory that the prototype could be Ludwig has since been answered. Chapter 5's cassette tape between Elliot and Oliver confirms they're two separate people. Oliver tells Elliot, "Ollie's gone. I'm a test run, a prototype. He's not Ludwig. He's the boy Ludwig used and discarded." So was Ludwig a murderer? He experimented on children and treated Oliver like a lab rat. Whether he killed that specific boy or not, his hands were far from clean. The wholesome toy maker image was always a lie. The only question left is whether someone else astronauts wanted to make sure the world knew it. How did Huggy Wuggy actually survive Chapter 1? At the end of Chapter 1, we drop a crate on Huggy and he falls deep into the factory, slamming against rails and pipes on his way down. Left shoulder blade, back of the neck, and face all took direct hits. We don't even hear him hit the ground. Most people assumed he was dead, but in Chapter 4, Huggy shows up alive. Half his left arm is completely gone, a chunk of his head is missing, and he's covered in bandages. Someone patched him up, but who can we blame for this? The previous theory that I had was Harley Sawyer. As the doctor, Sawyer was wired into the factory systems and could control doors, cameras, and machinery. He even knew exactly which experiments we'd faced, calling out Huggy, Catnap, and Mommy by their experiment numbers. But Sawyer doesn't have a physical body. He can't actually go collect Huggy and patch him up. The most likely answer is the prototype. He was already deep in the factory when Huggy fell. He collected Mommy's body from the grinder in Chapter 2. He killed Catnap in Chapter 3 and took his skin and stomach. The prototype has a pattern of collecting toys, dead or alive, and using their parts to build himself up. And we can see Huggy's hand attached to the front of the prototype's body, so we know he got to Huggy at some point. So why keep him alive instead of just harvesting all of him for parts? Maybe because Huggy is still useful. He was the factory security system and was known to be very obedient. And in Chapter 5, before the train chase, the prototype attacks Huggy and Kissy. That means at some point the prototype repaired Huggy enough for him to function again, only to turn on him later. The fall itself wasn't enough to kill him either. These bigger bodies are tough. Huggy had already escaped the factory once before in 1992 and survived being shot at with darts and taking on multiple employees. A fall down some pipes wasn't going to end him. Huggy didn't just survive Chapter 1. The prototype found him, repaired him, took what he needed, and kept him going until he wasn't useful anymore. And that's what the prototype does with everyone. Uses them until he's done with them.